All right, we're back for another weekly episode of Career Bound. Today, we're going to be talking about the books that we would read at 18. And essentially, these are the books that we recommend for anybody getting their career started, that has that slight entrepreneurial spirit, wants to take control of their career and their life. So, we got 12 books. We're going to kind of go through rapid fire here, talk about each of them, give a quick blurb. We might get into a confrontation or two. Who knows? Things might get crazy on this Friday morning over here. So, all right, first book up, Last Safe Investment.
Great book. Great book. This list, before we get too deep into the actual list, I think, the reason I like this selection of titles, and, this list could be 100 books long, but a couple reasons of both philosophical career and then like brass tacks business and career advice. Books are more like focused on hard skills. Some of them are more like thinking of business operationally, financially. And then there's a lot of like hard skills mixed in. This book, Last Safe Investment, is like the perfect list. It's a great blend of both of those. I think it does present some big ideas about not thinking about your career, but how you think about the foundation of sort of your life and career, which I think is like your personal financial pursuits and how that sort of plays out in your career and you spend your time, the way you spend your money, and how that can either like support, it can hinder you. And I think it challenges some conventional thinking about like the way to design your career and personal financial life, which is like conventional wisdom being like minimize risk, put all, set out into qualified retirement, corporate job with the corporate route as you can. Instead, this book is like, you need to focus on skills. You need to be investing not just in like credentials and school, but in like actually developing your skills, gaining useful experience, building valuable relationships, investing in things that give you momentum, and like the freedom and flexibility to design your life and career you want. And so great yeah, sort of.
This is probably the most impactful book for me personally on this list. I read it in my early 20s, and just like the overall framework of not thinking about investments in career success, all of those decisions in terms, like just specifically in terms of financials. Like it got me thinking about like, what kind of life do you want to build? How can you, like the book's title, Last Safe Investment, it's saying like the last safe investment is in yourself, essentially. And talking about like, how to, find kind of like like-minded people, build your own community, build a career in life that is uniquely your own. And I think since I've read that book, like that book articulated, I think a lot of the things that I was already trying, like how I was making decisions in terms of like, hey, I'm going to study, these things because they interest me, not because, hey, this is going to lead to, a career path that has a certain, kind of linear, earning potential due to it. It's like, follow your interests. If you genuinely invest in yourself, you're going to surround yourself with other people that you want to be around, that kind of push you to grow in the ways that you want to. Essentially building a life where like your values are aligned with the things that you do, the people that, you work with, the people that you spend your time with and stuff. So really recommend that book. I think that overall mental model is one that I still like hold pretty close.
Yeah. Sort of practical thing that I took away from this book, aside from the mindset. And this is like early on in your career, has continued for me since, the first read this book, is the shift in thinking increasing your human capital in terms of expenses, and instead thinking of them as actual investments. So like, you want to buy that book, you want to take that course, you want to go to that conference, you want to go like anything that valuable for your own intellectual development, professional development, personal development. You see the dollars of those, the dollar cost of those in your life. Sometimes you, and I think early on, sometimes, frugal or thinking that I was doing right by myself financially. It's like, I've got, this money in a retirement plan. I've got money in savings, and being best use of that. Is it me going and in my early going to these conferences? Is it buying these books that are, exposing me to do instead of thinking about that as just money going out the door, thinking about it in terms of if I from this $20 book, if I develop 2 new valuable relationships from this conference, there is actual ROI from that doesn't show your number sometimes. And it's hard to see or quantify or to even know how some of those things are going to pay off. But thinking instead of this is something I'm interested in, I think it's valuable for me, even if I can't clearly point to here's how it's going to be valuable. I think that was an important mindset shift, but it was an actual practical application, because it led to me. But it's well, I shouldn't spend $20 more. It was I really want the ideas in this book. So it's buy the book, read the book, get the ideas, move on.
Yeah, I think it's a great book to read if you have a tendency to kind of take on a scarcity mindset. This will kind of, make the very strong case why you should not have that, strong scarcity mindset and stuff. And it can help you kind of figure out just a different way to look at, how you spend your time, how you spend your resources, etc. All right, let's move on. Number 2, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So this is a book I have not read. Mitchell has read. He's always been a huge advocate of. This is a book that's very common to hear, entrepreneurs, especially small business entrepreneurs, really point to as a huge, influence on, how they think about their careers and everything. So I'll shame myself and say I have not gotten around to reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad just yet. So Mitchell, talk to us about it.
This is in the upper probably 2 or 3, 4 most impactful books on this list for me, and a lot of that is mindset. You make a good point. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is it's almost overly recommended. It's one of those it has become popular. People downplay the value of that book, I think. And I actually would say that it's probably the popularly recommended books. It's up there with actually holding dollar for dollar the amount of value that it's equal to the popularity. It's not anything revolutionary skill, actual mindset stuff. It's what I would call a gateway book. It's that book that you read that suddenly you're it's the blue pill in the Matrix. You're I'm suddenly exposed to this whole other world that I'm seeing things in a different way. And I think part of it is the most important sort of fundamental from that is how you make money matters. So when you're thinking about freedom, wealth, you're thinking about your optionality, how you directly sort of corresponds to your ability to maneuver and redesign your life. So, whether you're a W-2 employee or you're self-employed, an actual investor or owning a company, how that money flows through to you, tax implications it has, which basically means direct impact on how many of the dollars you're earning you actually get to keep after taxes, which if that's a sizable difference, that's that much money that you could put to work or that much money that you could have to live on. Is the way that Robert Kiyosaki talks about this, though, that I think when he introduces this idea, is wealth is not a ton of material, the fancy car. It's not the not all these things. Wealth is how many days could you survive without work? And that was one of the things I was I've never really thought about it. That he uses the setup, this idea about investing in cash flowing assets as a way to like recapture your time, recapture control over your life. Ideas that are valuable in it. I think that there are probably much better books that go into actual details of some of the
Concept.
But it's one of those books that if you've been told go take this route in your life, your entire life, and you've never been exposed to any type of contrarian thinking, like this is one of the like probably most simple yet profound entry points into thinking about things differently.
Yep. All right. It's on the Amazon list right now for me. I'll make sure to crank it out in the next few weeks here. All right. How to find fulfilling work. This is a personal favorite of both of us. I haven't revisited this book in, gosh, probably 7, 8 years now.
Wow.
But I remember reading it again. It was kind of right at the beginning of getting my career started. Another one that was just kind of very eye-opening in terms of different ways to think about things. So I think the biggest kind of takeaway that's still with both of us that kind of we could probably directly source from this book is this concept of like career discovery and career exploration. So the premise of the book is, in order to figure out what you really enjoy doing, what you're meant to do, what you're good at, et cetera, like you need to go out there and try a bunch of different things rather than, the common, not the good, but the common approach of, hey, at, between the ages of somewhere between like 17 and 22, I'm going to identify what is the singular career path that is designed for me. And then I'm just going to be on this like linear career path for the next 20, 30, 40 years and stuff. So How to Find Fulfilling Work, good book there. Mitchell, other than kind of like the big premise, big concepts there, any specifics that you kind of, keep with you from this book?
Yeah, I think what you described is critical. I think if you haven't thought about your career deeply in that way, that it offers you somewhat of a roadmap. But the thing that sticks with me is this idea of like there are different dimensions of meaningful work, and we don't all have the same sort of calibration across those dimensions, and it'll also change over time, and probably in different seasons of your life. But those 5 dimensions, he talks about like extrinsic motivators versus intrinsic motivators. So extrinsic being like money or status. So you work at a big company, you have a lofty title, you make a ton of money. Some people really respond to those. I think early in my career, those were the things that really drove me. And that's those targets that led to decisions about my education, sort of paths that I was contemplating. And I think that kind of the best stuff in life de-emphasizes those, whether they're important or not to you, put that on the side. But it really gets the heart of those intrinsic motivators. So like, are you making a difference? Do you feel like you're making a difference or having an impact? Are you passionate about the things that you're pursuing, or the way you're spending your time and energy, whether that's or
because
outside of your work, because your work enables you to do that? Are you using your talents? So are you working in an environment that challenges you, uses the things you're good at to help other people? And there are probably more. Those are his big 5. But those have been like, I think in my own career and also through what we do working with young adults who are, that's been really useful framework is helping people understand it's okay if this mix of like making a difference most important thing to you. That's totally fine. If that's the case, maybe calibrate your career towards as opposed to like going and pursuing the maximum salary with the biggest company. And like every mix, and I think helping people kind of understand their natural disposition across those dimensions it's honestly kind of earth-shattering in the context of your pursuit towards finding fulfilling work.
Yeah, Yeah, I like the how he kind of frames things is your work should be life enhancing. And like you're saying, like that can be a different mix for many different people and stuff. So I think, especially today, like a lot of young people, I think feel pressure to be like, okay, I have to find my like one true dream career path. I have to do work that is like fulfilling and meaningful at the highest level. I'm making a huge impact on other people. I'm doing what I'm destined to do, and I'm also, by the way, like able to make great money from it, become financially wealthy from it, etc. And it's like it's a lot of pressure to be like you're essentially, I think what that leads to is feeling like your work, your career has to like be the be all end all of your life.
Yeah.
And I think just taking a step back and kind of, when we're working with young people is like, hey, first of all, one, you don't have to figure all this out right away. You very much have, time on your side, but two, like that's going to look like you're on a journey to like discover what your career profile should be for you, not how to like force yourself to like want and become something other people think you should be. And I think, how to find fulfilling work kind of gives a really good framework of how to like get that process started. And then like, just gives you like mental models to, kind of keep you in check of like, okay, like, am I, like 2 years into my career, is it actually the most important thing for me to like do the most impactful, most fulfilling thing? Or, are there things that I'm really passionate about outside work, and work is a little bit more about, hey, I want to have a good quality of life. I want to be around good people. I want to, of course, feel like my work makes a difference, but there's other things that are kind of more like driving factors in my life beyond the work that I do. All right.
I think
Psychology.
we got to skip ahead. I think we got to skip ahead on this list. We'll come back to psychology and money, but I would say read in tandem with how to find fulfilling work is how will you measure your Christensen? And this is a nice contrast. Roman Kersner acts like here are the 5 dimensions of your life, and Clayton Christensen, he has sort of his own not dimensions, but he asks some questions. Make sure you stay out of jail. How will you make sure you're proud of what you accomplished? Like, how do you make sure that you achieve your potential? Other version of the questions similar to that, but and those are useful to reflect on. The biggest takeaway for me, and this in tandem with the ideas we just talked about, talks about the difference between having an emergent strategy, deliberate strategy. And like one useful application of this is he talks about choosing to go to college and then to graduate school without like a specific anchor. So for instance, like the person that's a high achiever coming out of high school, what they want to do, who, in Kersnarak's language, responding to prestige or money or status or and they're getting all the way through this journey that's sort of and they don't know where they want to go, and that's the wrong strategy at that point in time of your life. So that's using a deliberate strategy, ready for it. And so like emergent, the way he is like you're maximizing optionality, you're maximizing trying things before you're ready to really big bets until you find the thing you really want to go all in on, and then you shift towards a deliberate strategy. And he gives an example of a friend of very young age, like in his early 20s, that he of a Fortune 500 company, and he came out of school, business school or something like that, right after. Instead of going and trying to work at a Fortune 500 company immediately, he went and took this like job in like managing operations for like a coal mine or oil refinery or something. It was just like absolutely brutal work. But he knew, he's like, I know that I need to learn how to lead people in the trenches. I need to know I need to be really good at making decisions under pressure. I need to be able to get people to trust me and follow me. I need to learn all these other skills as well about running a business and managing it. But in order to go get those skills, I'm going to experiences that expose me to those and put me in those types of situations rather than trying to take this direct route to like the top. I'm going to go make sure I get the experiences and skills. And this is a very deliberate career move. And I think he ended up being like the young CEO of a Fortune 500 company eventually, but is it like super valuable, over indexing on the skills and experience than the title and prestige. But his career went like this very quickly, as opposed to this like typical route to, corporate leadership of like long linear over a really long.
Yeah. So that's the value of once you have a certain amount of clarity and confidence.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is the thing I do want to pursue. That's a positive example of being very deliberate in a way where it's like, I'm gonna approach this differently than most people do, where they're kind of just like passively following, the normal steps that they're expected to take.
Yep.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I think we're, as we're talking about these books, I can kind of see a more organized kind of order to read these in if we were, organizing this list. So I think, How to Find Fulfilling Work, I would say Measure Your Life would be the first book I would read. Then I would go to How to Find Fulfilling Work. And then I think the third one there would be The Last Safe Investment. And I think those three together kind of make a nice entry point of just like getting you to think more deeply about thinking more deeply about your career, how to approach your life, etc. And then I think, we can move on to others on this list that I think are more specific to people that are, particularly like they want to be in business. They want to be a little bit more entrepreneurial and stuff.
Those are the mindsets, and a lot of these pretty tactical.
Yeah, they're pretty tactical. I would probably put Rich Dad Poor Dad number 4, just understanding what that book is about. Okay, what's the next book you want to knock out?
I think Psychology of Money is probably next. The Almanack of Naval, Ravikant, like next to like they're still mindset oriented, but they do have some about like what you should be doing in your career, what you should be. Psychology of Money, I think the wealth is what you don't see. So I think we have this money in terms of possessions, in
what's in your bank account, what do you own,
instead of your ability to live the ability to do the things you want, or because you're not spending on all these obvious frivolous things, to put more money away that you can use on other things. They're buying assets or just having more peace of mind. It's a really good book at the start of your career, thinking about, I think when you're facing that pressure of, I want to do what I also need to make money, and like wrestling with those kind of issues and thinking about it in bigger terms, because one of the other points detail on is like it tells the story, I think, right at the start of the book of like the janitor who died with, but everybody thought he was poor. And it's like, he probably like, I mean, maybe it was a life that brought him joy, but it's like almost overly frugal life where he was like, his quality of life was probably low, and he was saving all of his money and investing. He died, and like all of his money was given away according to his wishes, which he didn't even get to live to see, the benefits that his created for other people. But it's like, while you're on this pursuit of like amassing time, are you using it not only to enrich your life, but enrich the lives of other people around you? Or is it just kind of this futile pursuit to have a certain number, continue to grow the balance. But it's one that I think is really good about testing your assumptions and thinking through your relationship with money. And the earlier you can kind of build a useful framework for yourself, the better. You can avoid, some years of pain, but also like kind of career and your personal financial philosophy.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about, the kind of like personal finance and how you and your overall relationship to money is a theme that gets touched upon in a number of these books. And I think, for a young person just getting started in their career in life, like the sooner you can start thinking about that stuff more intentionally, more deeply, the better off you're going to be. I would say like there's no one specific formula on how to, approach like personal finances and stuff. But I think most people are just like scared and intimidated to start going down that rabbit hole and like kind of form their own opinions on that stuff. So the more intentional early on you can be, the better off you're going to be. And then I think just being able to understand like there's more than two options with how you kind of approach personal finances, especially like through your 20s. Like I think, it's very common where it's like, hey, I'm going to be like the very frugal friend in my group. And I'm always kind of, counting to every dollar and, every, cent that I'm spending. And like, I'm not going to go out with my friends because, I have a strict monthly budget that I'm sticking to, et cetera. And then on the other side is like it's you're either the most frugal friend in your group or you're like the irresponsible friend in your group who's like, I don't know how they pull these things off, but somehow they just like barely have enough money to go like on crazy adventures and do the things they want. But, it seems like maybe they're on a path where that's going to catch up to them, sooner rather than later and stuff. I think that's how most young people are those are the concepts that they're kind of introduced to, is like, be very frugal, or you're going to be the kind of person who, kind of just like ignores any kind of personal financial responsibility. And then, when you're in your mid 20s, late 20s, you're, maybe you have less optionality because of.
Small aside here on that point, there's another book. I don't think it's like as monumental that it should make one if you ever go down the personal finance rabbit trail. It's called Die with Zero. And I can't remember the guy's name. I maybe have it on the shelf here. Bill Perkins, who like went on to be very successful hedge fund manager and made tons of money. But he's telling working in, I think, the mailroom or something, some really on Wall Street. He and a friend, they're script in Manhattan early on in their careers, like absolutely dirt money. And Bill is talking about what his approach, which he was like saving every dollar that he could. And his friend took out this massive loan at the time. It was probably like 40 annual income was at the time, to go take this trip across Europe. Hop from hostel to hostel and backpack around Europe. And he fast forwards and tells his managing director, he kind of like brags to him about how much money he saved. And the guy, like, he scolds him and he's like, you're an idiot. He's like, you're going to make money in your career if you continue down this path. You're going to, but you couldn't save right now. And you're like ruining your quality of life and stressing yourself out and like barely scraping by, which is adding all this additional stress to your life, when you could just be living and focusing on like executing a plan. The money is going to come. And it's like a really good kind of added to the layer of, thinking about your money is like, it's okay. Ties into safe investment too. If you're like over indexing on building the experience, creating experiences and the skills and like execute, you have a deliberate strategy, even if you're not saving a ton of money, you may be on a path where it doesn't matter. Obviously, you can't count your eggs before they hatch or whatever, count the chickens before they hatch. But still, like, that way of thinking about it, I think is a useful framework in contrast to conventional financial advice too.
Yeah, my favorite very simple framework on kind of personal finances in terms of like, should you be more frugal, should you be kind of more opportunistic, is, you know, don't focus solely on how you can save an extra $100. Focus on how you can bring in, $1,000 more dollars. Like if you're in a tight financial situation, or, just kind of using that as a framework, there's more like the more you can think about how you can earn more versus how you can save more, the better off you're going to be.
That's why I think
I think that's a much more challenging mindset to really embody for most people. It's actually like, if you're a generally like responsible, mature young adult, like you're going to handle your finances just fine in terms of making sure you're not, spending at an outrageous amount, and then you're not going to be able to afford rent in a few months, or, go into a bunch of debt, etc. So the more, if you're already like an above average young adult, you have, your shit together and stuff, like force yourself to focus on, essentially like, how can I, like, where can you find opportunities to earn more, and not just in terms of money, but like overall resources, rather than always kind of resorting to, hey, I got to cut back on expenses because I'm in a, tight position.
Yeah, I think it's mindset shift, but like conventional wisdom says, spend less than you make. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's actually good application. Better way to say that same advice is make more than you spend. It's the abundance, it's focus.
Yeah.
The scarcity.
Yep, for sure. All right. So let's hit the Almanack of Naval. Really, really popular book in startup tech bro Twitter world, for sure.
read the Twitter thread if you don't read the whole book.
A lot of big Naval fans out there. I would definitely recommend checking out and reading the book itself. Naval also has a really, he's regularly on different podcasts and everything. Like if you just Google Naval Ravikant, like podcast appearances, like some good podcasts, him talking about these general concepts and everything. I think this is probably my favorite kind of like tactical career advice if you're trying to, build, the like kinds of careers that, have like a balance of, can lead to financial success, lead to impact, lead to you having like control over your career destiny, etc. I think this book definitely has much broader applications than just like, oh, you should go like into the startup tech world, etc. But yeah, really, really good advice. He kind of takes that nice broad approach of, hey, here are my thoughts on building wealth. Here are my thoughts on, making sure you don't end up like a miserable old fool in your career. Like, how can you do things that bring joy and happiness to your life, but also, they're like, you're also pursuing careers with upside.
I mean, the biggest essay, most probably valuable, impactful thing is it was getting lucky, which I think is like a really to follow. Is like a lot of people executing their plan is going to lead to like some fortuitous event in the future that's going to like work out, as opposed to it being like a very deliberate thing. Like there's a route to build wealth. Now you've built it. What are you going to do? There's all this other important stuff you still need to figure out in your life. Solving for that is somewhat easy in the grand scheme of things. Really useful thread though.
Yeah. My favorite essay from this book is probably on playing long-term games with like find people that you want to play long-term games with, essentially. So just like the importance of investing in relationships, working with people that you could kind of see, you could see yourself working with or being like, regularly associated with, over the long term. And this is a good, like this book, not just that essay, but, throughout the book, like just really good reinforcement of, I think just thinking about your career on the longest term time horizon possible, like always keeping that in your back of your mind, as opposed to being like, I feel like I'm just making decisions, kind of year by year, trying to figure out how I can get into a better position than I am today, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, et cetera. Like it's important to be able to like take a step back and look at like, hey, like what is actually important to you over, a 10, 20, 30 year time period. And I think that's a really valuable way to kind of gain perspective on where you're at now and, what you can do to kind of set yourself up for the long term and everything. So great book. All right. I think we're moving into the more
mindset now. The other 6 relatively.
Yeah, these are like, I would just, these are all like business books essentially from here.
They are.
Yeah. So
I think they're
let's knock them out real quick. What?
They said there's some of the that actually have kind of novel ideas as opposed to repeating things over and over and over again. First one.
Yeah, for sure. They wouldn't be on the list if we didn't think they were good business books. Let's knock these out. So Personal MBA.
Yep. Great infrastructure for, core ideas about business. It's a great primer. I think probably the most valuable part of this book is actually the reading list by reading this book. It's literally like he probably gives you 100 throughout that. And if you read 20 of those, or like pick the 2 top recommendations out of each one of the, he goes through finance, he goes through marketing, sales, revenue, like he goes through all the different functions of a business, and networking, and like he makes book recommendations in each one of those. MBA, pick 2 out of each chapter, 2 additional books, and read through those. Got a legitimate curriculum for leveling up. And I ideas of all those different chapters too. But I've got, I keep that book within arm's reach, and I've referenced some of those things, and I've probably bought the book recommendations or more that he's had through those, and I've read them. So it's a great book.
I think it's a great book to, buy. You don't have to read it like front to back like a normal book. It's just, kind of a collection of different concepts and everything. And I think it's a really good book for any younger person who, thinks they want to like kind of pursue a business career, just to develop some of the vocabulary and kind of like raise your level of business acumen. And then I think it's a book that becomes more and more valuable as you actually get into, the work of, running a business, being inside of a business, et cetera. So like if you have, aspirations to, maybe someday, run your own small business or, start a company, great book to just pick up and start learning some of the lingo. If, you just, at the early stages of your professional career, your work, I think it's great for like first year employee inside a startup or a small business, just to help you kind of gain context and that business acumen, so you can be working as an employee, but have like start kind of taking on the thought process, like from more of an owner's perspective. You can look at the business beyond just like what specific role that you're in.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. I think one to pair up with that easily would be Financial Intelligence for Entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and that might actually be a recommendation from within the finance and accounting section of that book. I don't remember, but this is my favorite primer for business finance. Like I think it's a great entry point before you go take accounting classes or finance, because you feel like you lack that aptitude, like especially if you have some exposure. Like I read this book early on when I was doing a lot of bookkeeping. I was doing accounts receivable. I was involved in like revenue operations of a and I'd already taken some accounting classes. I had the general aptitude of like knowing and like how things flow from a balance sheet and profit and loss statement, like mechanics. But this is like actually understanding how that plays out into the business strategy, how finance it's actually a strategic consideration for all the other functions of a business, as opposed to something that you're just like reviewing of like, how did we perform in the past? It can be something that you take this proactive approach to, that it starts to talk. I mean, it does give you sort of the vocabulary, but it also helps you think about what the actual application within your business mean and how they can be levers that you pull to deliver more results. And so I just think every small business owner should read this book. Like they should know the ideas in there. And I think that, the average person that has no financial background would get a ton of benefit from it.
Yeah, I think this book is best for people that are, actually running, operating a small business, or, are part of a small team doing that, and you need to be involved in, certain level of decision making, or just having good context there. I still think it's a valuable book just to kind of pick up, even if you're like very early on or before you get your career started, just to kind of gain an understanding of some of these concepts. But I think it's like in that situation, like don't put pressure on yourself to be like, okay, I know all the, exactly how all of these things would like apply into a small business, without having that actual like experience and context by being in it yourself and everything. But good, like just like Personal MBA, like good context to start building, good kind of vocabulary to start developing. But I think another one that becomes more useful the farther into like a business career, entrepreneurial career that you get.
I'm looking at this list now, and we'll get to, we can go through the rest of them, but the Personal MBA is kind of like, it's the foundation. Financial intelligence, this is like the accounting, finance, understanding sort of the lifeblood of the business. This is like operational mastery 101, building an actual functional business, figuring out how to systematize things, and thinking about like how time is being spent in the business, as that is a system. Even if you haven't built a system, like the things that you're doing over and over and over again for a business, that's an opportunity to build a system that creates predictable results in a business. I think that's like, if you are working in a small business, if you are a solopreneur, or you're like, you have a small business that you feel like you continue to stall out, like don't have enough time today, like that's a good one to read and rethink. Some good takeaways in that one.
I would highly recommend this book for someone like 16 to 19, and you're working at like a local bakery or like a small retail store, and as you're working in that kind of business as an hourly wage employee, and you have kind of business and entrepreneurial aspirations, read this book while you're in that kind of business. And that's going to give you much greater context into like how that business is operating, both like what are the strengths and weaknesses of the business, kind of the perspective of the business owner of a business like that. I think that's a really cool book to read, kind of at that stage. And then it's still a book, we value, like I revisit it from time to time, just trying to think about like, hey, how can we make our operations more efficient? How can, we kind of set up to scale, et cetera, even though it's like designed to be much more of like true, like small business operations. It definitely has, applications beyond that.
Got we've had the finance book, the operations book. Next on in this order, the Ultimate Sales Letter by Dan Kennedy. So this is one among great foundational books about the psychology, copywriting, selling things,
Sales,
creating offers, designing a hook around your product, like actually convincing people, and then designing a need to meet that want, and so that creating demand for your business. If you're gonna be an entrepreneur, like at least familiarize yourself with copywriting. You don't have to go take master classes on it, but like you need to know how to create an offer, know how to fulfill that offer, and you need to be able to articulate to someone else why that offer is valuable. It's convincing and compelling to them. This is a great primer. There's another book on this list that's great and touches on some of the same things, but it's more marketing focused. But this is the sales book that I think that you should start with. Yep.
And then natural pairing up of that with $100 million offers.
Yeah, by Alex Hormozi. Great book. I think a lot of marketing applications to this too, but again, a lot for designing the hook. I like how though, in terms of like actual exercises to sit down and think through your business and figure out who it is you're serving today, if those are the customers, why they care about what you have or why they should care, and dissecting the language you're using and like just crafting something better. You had a lot of takeaways too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just great kind of overlap of like the intersection of the overall business model of a company, your sales and marketing strategy, like your core value proposition, what customers that you're targeting. It's fundamentally a like sales and marketing book, but I think it also has kind of like the broader, like, why does this business exist? Who are we trying to serve? How are we serving them to the best of our ability and stuff, like really, really good, simple, tactical kind of advice that it goes through to like actually help you implement some of these things. And like, it's a good book to just like think through like, all right, like what should if you're just kind of like thinking more deeply, going into deeper level of strategy with, a business that you're a part of, good kind of simple tactical book to read as you're going through that. Again, very similar to eMyth. Like I think this book and even, Ultimate Sales Letter, like really good book for, people that are already running a business, but I think it can also be really valuable for, if you're 1 to 2 years into your career and you're working at a small business or startup, like if you want to kind of gain that context and business acumen, like you have an actual business or company that you're involved with that you can kind of apply this to, even if it's just, just kind of like thought exercises for yourself. And then same thing, like if you're, a teen working at Chick-fil-A or like a local small business, like really good. It'd be like, hey, like how would I apply this to, this business that I'm working for? And I think, again, just like a really valuable, if you're trying to level up kind of that entrepreneurial business acumen, definitely worth checking this out. And then, if you end up operating a business one day or you're in a leadership position, especially on the sales and marketing side, I definitely think a good book to keep coming back to.
All right, we got one more book on the list, breakdown, and so we kind of went through the different functions of the business here. Good to Great, a classic. I think this is more of the, if you're the actual business owner, you don't have to be a business owner to read this, but if you're the person who's thinking about like the vision of the business, what you're trying to build, the product development, the long-term roadmap, the actual business strategy, going from where you're at to like building something lasting and valuable. This is both and a lot of tactical exercises that you can go through. studies. That's mostly what the book is, like case studies of other businesses, corporations. But I think that's one that definitely more globally about what you're building.
It's like the most formal business strategy book on this list, I would say. There's some really good concepts that I think apply to like the individual career level. The biggest one there would be the hedgehog concept. So, hedgehog concept, very simply, it's the diagram of like overlapping of what are you deeply passionate about, what you can be the best in the world at, and what drives your economic engine. You can see how you can apply that at a company level. You can see how you can apply that at the individual career level. So I think, again, just like a lot of these books, I think this is still a really valuable book from an individual career perspective, not just, I have to have a business or a company that I am actively running to get value out of this thing. And then the case studies are really valuable to go through, and I think they do a good job of kind of showing how these apply in the real world and everything. But again, I think main takeaway there is like, again, either at the company level, personal career level, it's kind of like, here are very valuable mental models, concepts to apply to building something long-term and lasting.
All right, that's 12. We've been through them all. All great books. Definitely pick up copies. Detail about some of these after you read Rich Dad Poor Dad. We'll revisit some of them. But thank you. And we'll be back again soon.
All right.